and welcome to the Kindness Matters podcast. I'm your host, Mike Rathbun. As you might have guessed, this podcast is dedicated to kindness. Kindness is a superpower that each and every one of us possesses, a force that is strong enough to drastically impact your life and the lives of those around you for the better. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about kindness, and let's talk about how each and every one of us can use kindness to change the world. Hello and welcome to the Kindness Matters podcast. I am your host, Mike Rathbun, and I was looking through stuff the other day, and I saw this piece, and it was interesting to me. A 20-second hug can increase levels of oxytocin, that's the love hormone, reduce blood pressure and cortisol, that's the stress hormone. It increases happiness, lowers stress, and it improves relationships and connection. And I thought, I need to get an expert on the show to talk to me about this. And you know what? I found one. Please welcome, I say it like there's a studio audience. There's not.
There is.
The very special person, Edie Weinstein.
Yep. Hi.
Edie Weinstein from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Hi, Edie.
Hi. How are you doing? Actually, I think I found you. I don't remember how we connected. It might have been through a Facebook page where people.
I think I was looking for guests to talk about kindness.
So we found each other. That's perfect.
It was kismet.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We did that in my high school music, I think. Look at me, I'm a stranger in paradise. Okay, that's enough of that.
I usually don't get serenaded when I'm on podcasts. This is a bonus. Thank you.
First time for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So now, Edie, you are the co-founder of Bucks County Kind. That's Bucks County, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And back in 2014, I love this. You founded Hug Mobsters. Now, is that one word or two?
One word.
One word. Hug Mobsters. Armed with love. And you offered free hugs. What inspired you to say, hug me?
Well, I grew up in a very touchy-feely, huggy-kissy home where nobody left the house without a hug. And nobody came into the house without a hug. And what I remember is that when our friends would come to, or how my sister and I had friends that would come over, and they loved my parents' hugs. And I thought everybody grew up like that. Well, they didn't, unfortunately. Oh. And a lot of people grow up in homes where touch is either limited, sexual, abusive, coercive, or non-existent. And when I say coercive, I mean, go hug so-and-so.
Right.
And
hug your grandmother, hug your aunt.
Right. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on, about how we now do this in the next generation and 2 generations of my family. So I was always fascinated with the impact that hugging has on people. When I was a teenager, I belonged to a youth group, United Synagogue Youth, and US-wide, and we would gather together monthly for weekend conferences. And there would always be a puppy pile of people, just affectionate, platonic snuggling. Okay. And when I was in college, I had the same kind of tribe around me, people that were very affectionate. And again, I thought, everybody lives this way. And then again, I found they don't. So I had heard about this gentleman in Australia or New Zealand. Australia, I think. His name is Juan Mann, Juanmann, which turns out is a pseudonym for one man. This is it. So look it up, folks, on YouTube. There are videos of him offering free hugs. He had moved down there from I forget where, and was lonely, had no friends, knew nobody. I think a relationship had just ended. So he decided one day to stand in a town square with a sign that said free hugs and his arms open wide. 20 minutes went by before someone approached him. Everybody looked at him like, what the heck is this guy doing? Right. Walked past him, and his heart sank, and he thought, oh God, did I make a mistake? Then this older woman reached up to him, and I think he's pretty tall. And she was this tiny little woman whose dog had just died, and she was feeling very sad. So she reached up to him, he reached down to her, and a movement got started. People started coming up to him after they saw this. She broke the ice.
Yeah.
And he thought, I got something here. So he continued with that. So I had heard about this, and I said, why don't I try something like that, except making it a flash mob, a free hugs flash mob. So on Valentine's Day weekend, February 15th of 2014, I brought a group of friends to 30th Street Station, which is a big train station in Philadelphia, for a free hugs flash mob. And there were a dozen of us there. And we had our free hug signs. And one of our friends had a sign that said pro bono hugs.
No,
so
for the lawyers in the audience.
Lawyers, right. Very punny sense of humor. And we didn't just go around and do swoop by hugs with people. We asked them, would you like a hug? And if they said no, we'd say, okay, thank you for taking care of yourself. Hug somebody, even if it's yourself. But if they said yes, they got full on heart-to-heart hugs. And I estimated, without having a little clicker to verify it, we hugged about 200 people in an hour.
Gosh.
And another of our friends is a musician, so he had his guitar walking around singing the song "Give a Little Bit," that "Give a little bit of your love to me."
Supertramp.
Over and over and over. Supertramp, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Over and over and over again. And I don't know how many times he sang it, but it was really cool. So people from all over the world come through this train station, and some of them were shocked, did a double take, but went for hugs. There were some people, believe it or not, that did say no, and again, we respected that. But the one story that stands out more than any of it is a gentleman who approached us and told some of us that he was an Iraq war vet who was the only survivor of his platoon, and he had survivor's guilt.
Oh my God.
And he said, I thought about killing myself until just now when I met you people, because you give me hope. So of course we cried, those of us that were standing near him, and he asked if he could join us. So we gave him his own sign, and he went off hugging people. Now the thing is, all these years later, we just 9 years later, I have no idea where this man is. My prayer is that he continued on and that he found a new purpose as a result of our meeting. So we never know for the purpose that people cross our paths and what they carry with them.
Yeah, that would be, it's frustrating, right? I mean, you'd love to know, we all want to know what the end of the story is, right? Mm-hmm. But by the same token, I mean, in that brief moment, you gave purpose to this broken man's life.
Yeah. And it was mutual, because I got to see the impact of what one experience can do in someone's life.
Right.
So friends started calling us hug mobsters, hug mob, flash mob. And I thought, I didn't want it to be associated with gangsters or the mafia. So I added the tagline, armed with love. And a friend of ours who was there, Greg Campisi, is an artist, and he designed a logo and a T-shirt with heart with arms. So like one of these.
Oh,
my friend Donna gave me
this
cool pillow. She does the free hugs thing too. So we had T-shirts with this little critter on there, and I don't remember if I did anything with it for the next 6 months, but in June, and we're coming up now on the 9th anniversary of this event that I'm about to tell you about. On June 12th of 2014, on the way home from the gym, where I would be 5 or 6 times a week, working my butt off and working my heart out.
Good for you.
I had a heart attack on the way home. I was 55 years old, and I had no clue that this was coming. So as a result of that, I did cardiac rehab, and I thought, why don't I combine the hugging with the walking that I do through my little town of Doylestown, Pennsylvania. So I made up my own free hug sign and wore my T-shirt, and I went out into the community, and I stood on the corner of State and Main, where there's a Starbucks, where it's the center of town, and I just stood there, and people would approach me, and I would offer them hugs, and they would say yes. And then I started taking friends on strolls through the town, with our free hug sign. Sometimes I would do it with friends. Sometimes I would do it alone. And then I started taking it to larger events like parades, pride fests,
Nice.
where else? Sporting events, anywhere that there were groups of people who were open to hugging. And I've hugged all around the United States. I was visiting friends in Canada a few years ago. And then in May of 2018,
That's so cool.
I took the trip of a lifetime to Ireland. It was to celebrate my 60th birthday. And I had my free hug sign with me. And I hugged my way across Ireland. That was remarkable.
Oh my gosh. What an incredible.
Yeah. So it's one of my greatest joys.
Wow. That's just, I'm sitting here and I have a smile plastered on my face. You can see it. My audience
I can
can't.
see it. The audience can't.
I can't. I don't want to get rid of it.
Okay.
So, okay. So this was 2014 when you started it, and we're continuing. And you mentioned that you always did it with consent. I was going to ask originally if that had been impacted by the Me Too movement or Time's Up movement, but you always asked for consent.
Yeah, and particularly with children, if I was out on the streets hugging people and there were children with their grown-ups, and I would say to the adult, if it's okay with you and okay with your child, may I hug your child?
Yeah.
And sometimes the kids would say no, or they'd hide behind the adult. And I'd say, I guess that's a no. You don't want to, you don't have to. And I used it as a lesson for the parent, for the adult, saying this is all about body autonomy, body sovereignty. Nobody touches you without your permission. And not one parent said, how dare you try to educate me about child rearing. They all said, yes, honey, that's right. Because some of them would say, oh, go hug that lady.
Oh.
I remember one time I did a free hug stroll on South Street in Philadelphia, which is, I don't know if you remember the song from the 60s, South Street. Where do all the hippies meet? South Street.
Oh, yeah.
South Street. So that's kind of an artistic center of town.
Okay.
And a friend of mine who's a videographer followed me around. It was on my 5th cardioversary, 5 years after the heart attack. And there were 2 women and a little girl who was about 8 years old. And the mom said, oh, go hug that lady. And I said, no. Do you want to hug me? And she said, no. And I said, okay. And then I said to Mom, what about you? Oh, no. And I said, but you're offering her.
But you're making her do it. Right.
Right. So that's part of for me is consent education. Sure. Particularly with children. And every time someone would say no, I would say, hug somebody.
Right.
Hug your dog, hug your partner, hug your child, whoever. Hug yourself.
I was going to ask, I understand that hugging yourself can be just as beneficial or almost as beneficial as hugging somebody else.
Yeah, I don't know the science behind it, but I do know that physical touch, whether it's from another being or from yourself, we're hardwired for it. I believe we have skin hunger that's just as important to meet as food hunger.
Okay.
You think about the studies back in the 50s or 60s about babies in Romanian orphanages that got fed but didn't get picked up and held and sung to and rocked. They failed to thrive. Right. And adults fail to thrive too. Think about the epidemic of loneliness. Before the call, you referenced the CDC report recently came out about how there is an epidemic of loneliness, that people's health suffers when they don't get enough nurturing touch by consent. Now, they didn't use that languaging, but that's the way that I see it.
Right. And they mentioned 3 specific groups, I believe, in that report. Older Americans, older people. As a matter of fact, social isolation was associated with about a 50% increase in the risk of dementia. And I just finished an episode on dementia. And the other 2 groups were the immigrants and LGBT people are at higher risk because of isolation. So yeah, that's huge. And yeah. Okay, so you're hugging your way around the world
Mm-hmm.
since 2014, and then all of a sudden,
Bam.
it's like somebody slammed a door in your face.
Yes, yes.
Pandemic comes along. We can't even go outside of our homes, much less hug anybody. How did that affect your movement?
Well,
You-
first I can tell you how it affected my mood. I am not prone to depression or anxiety. I've been a therapist for 40 years, so I know what it looks like. I was depressed.
Yeah,
My grandson, Dean, had been born in January of that year. He's the best thing that happened that year for us. And I was there pretty much every day to help out. And then mid March, starting in mid March, I didn't see him for 11
oh
weeks.
my gosh.
And I work from home. I'm a psychotherapist, so I was able to do telehealth. So I wasn't out and about with people. I would venture out a little bit to go to the store, with my mask, and I'd do the whole thing that people did in the beginning, like washing everything down and all that. And it felt like we were under siege.
Yeah, for sure.
So with my grandson, I would make videos for him every day where I would sing to him or say nursery rhymes. My daughter-in-law and son we would do FaceTime. They would send pictures and videos of him. But that was only the visual connection. It wasn't the physical. And
Right.
I felt depressed. I thought, what if we could never hug again? And I had what I call a Godversation, which is, conversation with the God of my understanding. I said, how could you have created people with this ultimate, important need for physical contact and then have it be gone suddenly? And I have very powerful dreams. So shortly after that, I had a dream. And in the beginning of the pandemic, everybody in the dream was wearing masks, which I thought was really
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was connected in that way. But in the beginning of the pandemic, I had a dream in which we could hug back to back or back to front, like spooning.
Okay.
So that was a sense of relief, like, okay, eventually we can do that. And as I ventured out into the world, I was vaccinated, I was boosted, I wore a mask. When I'd be walking through Doylestown, I'd see people that I knew, and I asked, would you like a virtual hug, or can we hug back to back? Hold our breaths if you want, whatever. So that's how I started doing it. I was able to see my grandson again, probably, 11 weeks after that was. And then I was able to hold him for the first time with ultimate precautions taken. I wore a KN95 mask. I used hand sanitizer all up and down my arms. I had to have a blanket around me, and I was able to hold him, and I cried.
Yeah.
Like sobbing. About a month or so before that, I was visiting my cousin, who also lives in Doylestown, Jody, and we were sitting about 20 feet apart. She was on her deck. I was in the middle of the yard, and she has a beautiful dog named Maddie. Maddie's a chocolate lab, and you know how big dogs think they're lap dogs? Well, she kept running back and forth between us and jumped into my lap, covered in mud, and I didn't care. I just held on for dear life, and I cried. It was the first time I'd hugged another mammal besides myself.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was remarkable.
Yeah, it was really scary because you had no idea how long this was going to go on, right?
Yep.
I mean, many of us thought, will I ever be able to touch or see or,
right.
be with another human being? We didn't know. We didn't know what was going to happen.
Right.
And so, yeah, that was horrible. But now, did you eventually, here we are 3 years later. Did you eventually get back to your hug mobbing ways?
Not as fully as I did in the beginning. I've done it casually, but as we're speaking, it's the beginning of May. In May and June, there are Pride Fests going on in my area. So my intention is to go there with my sign and options. I'll offer people, would you like an actual physical hug, or would you like a virtual hug? Meaning I hug myself, you hug yourself.
Okay.
I will do it at your comfort level. Last weekend, I was at an event. Sunday was World Laughter Day. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not.
I'm also a certified laughter yoga leader, and people can look that up, laughteryoga.org.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's amazing, amazing experience. Simultaneously, it was Global Free Hugs Weekend. So I brought my free hug sign, I brought my open arms, and some of the people there were comfortable with a physical hug, some were only comfortable with a virtual hug.
And that's cool.
So so what this taught me more than ever is about options and consent, because don't just have to be physical contact.
Okay.
Um, but I don't know. I don't know if there have been any studies done whether a virtual hug is as beneficial as a physical hug. I'm thinking probably not. It just feels like a substitute.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it does, but
Mm-hmm.
a necessity, if you will. I don't.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
the healing power of hugging is absolutely. I found this piece where the University of North Carolina conducted a study with 59 women, and they found some interesting results. After a short series of questions and general chatting about their partner, some women ended each session with a 20-second hug. The women who received a hug from their partners had lower blood pressure and heart
Mm-hmm.
rates during stressful sections of the testing, and the researchers think that it was oxytocin release
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
was the cause for their Betty heart health. I don't know who
Mm-hmm.
she is, but it's better heart health, really.
Okay.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It does bring people together. It does enhance relationships. I think, and again, this is just anecdotal evidence because from my own experience, that it has an immuno, what's the right word? It improves our immune system.
Okay.
Think about the thousands of people that I have hugged, some of them living on the streets, some of them sweaty from sporting events. I never got sick. I didn't get sick from that.
Interesting.
And, I think about, about that, I'm not going to take any unnecessary risks. As I mentioned, I have a cardiac condition.
Sure.
I also have COPD. So my breathing, and if you hear the coughing, I'm not sick. It's just every once in a while, it's like, sneaks up on me. But I'm hoping that by hugging again, I'm going to feel better that way too. I'm going to, my lungs will be happier and healthier.
If anybody out there is listening as a researcher, contact Edie Weinstein at.
Yeah,
You could
seriously.
be a great
By
case
divine
study.
design at Comcast.net. If you find that, if there is a benefit, but is there as much of a benefit with virtual hugging as physical hugging? And I'm sure there's studies out there that talk about the immune building properties of hugging and hugging and COPD. I'll look that up too. There's probably something out there about that.
And now you also have. You have a radio show, correct?
I did.
Oh, you
I
did.
had a radio show for about 3.5 years. It was called It's All About Relationships. And it was on Blog Talk Radio. And everybody that I interviewed had something to do with relationships of some kind, not just romantic, but
Right.
relationships. They talked about relationships with themselves, with their family members, with animals, with God, whatever it is.
Whatever
But
that
I really
relationship looked
believe
like.
that it is all about relationships. And to me, that's what hugging is about too.
Sure.
That if you're hugging heart to heart with somebody, there's a bond there. There's some connection that you make with that other person.
Yep. Absolutely. That is fantastic. And this kind of goes along with kind of the theme of my last book was change the world, and that we can all change the world by changing one person's world at a time, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
just for a short. And your experience with the hug mobsters kind of proves that, because
Mm-hmm.
not one person walked away from a hug feeling bad or feeling depressed or
Mm-hmm.
feeling lonely.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I mean, how many
I
lives do you think
believe
you've
that.
changed that way?
I believe, and they've changed my life too.
Sure.
I remember when I'm talking about the free hug stroll on South Street, this one woman walked up to me wearing a, oh my God, hijab.
Oh,
And that was at the height of Islamophobia.
sure.
And I offered her a hug and she said yes. And she says, who wouldn't, I could hear her voice, who wouldn't want a hug? And I said, believe it or not, there are some people that don't. And she shook her finger and said, and I'll send you the video if you want to look
Oh,
at it.
great.
She said, even those that say they don't want it, they need it. She was probably maybe about my age, something like that.
Okay.
So there are some people whose hugs remain with me. When I was in Ireland, I was walking through Ayr Square Park in Galway, and this young man was blowing these massive bubbles, and he had dreads down below his shoulders and was shirtless. And I approached him for a hug, and he said, of course. And my hair was, folks can't see it, but I have very purple hair. And my hair was very purple then,
And
too.
confirm.
And he says, you come from the land of the purple marshmallow people. And so we laughed, we talked a little bit, and I went on my way. And as I was walking through the park again, about an hour later, he says, come here. And I said, what? And he says, I'm wearing patchouli oil, and I want to get some on you. So he's rubbing his head against me like a kitty cat. So I have a picture, again, which I'll send you of this gentleman. I don't remember his name, but obviously I will remember him forever, too.
I might make that the cover art for this.
Yeah, I'll send that to you.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, because I'm standing in front of him with my free hug sign.
That would be fantastic. Yeah. What a great way to spend a Saturday morning. This is going to come out on a Thursday,
thank you. Yeah, me too. Real quick, I want to tell you, I took it a step further. This past October 1st of 2022, I did my first TEDx talk called Overcoming the Taboo of Touch.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it was based in part on Hug Mobsters, but also on a project, a thesis that I did in graduate school called Counseling Practitioners' Views on Using Touch as a Therapeutic Modality. Because most therapists are taught, don't touch your clients.
Sure.
Certainly don't hug them, So it was a little bit about that, a little bit about the benefits of safe, nurturing touch by consent in a therapeutic setting. And it ended with a song. How are you with a call and response sing-along?
Oh, I'm not.
Oh, it's easy. This is really easy.
Okay.
So at the very end of the talk, I did a call and response sing-along. The song is called The Hug, and it was written by Fred Small, who is a singer-songwriter. He started out his career as a civil liberties lawyer, became a traveling folk singer, and now is a Unitarian Universalist minister, I think in Massachusetts.
Okay.
So the story is about a psychiatrist, or a psychologist who worked in a psychiatric hospital who was fired for hugging his patients. Oh. And with consent. Yeah, you're pouting. So yes, it's very much a pouty song.
Yeah.
So the chorus goes like this. So when I sing, I want a hug, sing it back to me. Okay. Just those lines. Ready? I want a hug.
I want a hug.
When we say hello, I want a hug.
I want a hug.
When it's time to go, I want a hug.
I want a hug.
'Cause I want you to know I'm awfully fond of you. I want a hug.
I want a hug.
What a wonderful feeling. Want a hug.
Want a hug.
To feel you squeeze and want a hug.
Want a hug.
It certainly seems like the natural thing to do.
Oh, that's a great.
So that's how I ended the TEDx talk. Yay.
That was
fun. So look up Fred Small. I want, the hug song.
Okay.
Very, very cool song.
There are going to be so many links in my show notes.
Oh, good.
I'll do the link. If you will send it to me, I will do.
Yep.
I will post all of these videos, and
wonderful.
I want to do your TED Talk. Was that video?
Yes, wonderful.
It's on YouTube.
Thank you. Perfect. I would love to. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Edie, it has been such a pleasure to have you on this show. I can't believe it. We're going to do another one, though, right?
Yep.
We're going to do another show with your friend
about Bucks
Joanne.
County Kind with my friend Joanne Petrin. We'll talk more about that. So certainly hugs are spreading kindness. So what I invite you to do right now, audience, put your arms around yourself, give yourself a great big hug, and imagine hugging people as you're doing this. All the people in your life that you love to hug. And then put an extra one in there for someone whose hugs you've been missing.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
And send that out into the world.
That's so awesome. You have been a blessing to me. Thank you so
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I can't wait to talk to you again. But until then, be well. get back to the gym. You're off to the gym now.
I'm heading to the gym. Yep.
Okay.
Keep those arms strong.
Okay. Take care, Edie. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for the gift of your time today.
My pleasure.
What a great conversation. And Edie is so correct. Human touch is an absolute necessity. I think it probably ranks right up there with food, water, and shelter as far as human needs. We all need that. And what a great way to go about that with the Hug Mobsters. You will find all of Edie's links to all of her goings on and things that we discussed in the show in the show notes. And I so appreciate her and her message today. And you know who else I appreciate? I appreciate you for listening to this show today. I will be back next week with a new show. But in the meantime, be that person who roots for others, who tells a stranger they look amazing, and encourages others to believe themselves and their dreams. You have been listening to the Kindness Matters podcast. I'm your host, Mike Rathbun. Have a fantastic week.